Hey, how you doing, Marty Wolf?
Hey, Joe Redding from PSA. Another a great podcast. Looking forward to it, man.
Where does this day take you? Where are you at? You look like you're in another office
Well, I am
situation.
in world headquarters of PSA in beautiful Duryea, Pennsylvania.
Awesome. So you're at the headquarters.
I'm at
That's
HQ today. Yes,
that's great.
see if I can wreak some havoc while I'm here before I
Well,
leave.
I'm sure you will. But so thanks for taking time out of your schedule here to join us. So Marty, today we're going to be discussing the business and technology behind an easier way to use and program industrial robots in a variety of material removal and finishing processes. So we're joined by Maximiliano Falcone, Vice President of Sales at PushCorp Inc. So Max, affectionately known more as Max, has more than 20 years of automation experience, and having spent those years with a large automotive systems integrator, major OEM, robotic OEM, and now 5+ years with PushCorp. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in mechanical engineering as well as a Master of Science in product development from the University of Detroit Mercy, where he also resides on the advisory board for the School of Mechanical Engineering. He has extensive knowledge of large systems installations, especially pertaining to metal finishing, welding, where he does hold a patent, robotic guidance, yet another patent, and assembly and machine vision. So with Max help today, Marty, we are going to learn a little bit more about himself and PushCorp, which is a leading robotic manufacturer of robotic material removal end of arm tooling solutions, and they have over 25 years of product development and have helped customers automate applications that were once considered nearly impossible with a robot. These include grinding, sanding, deburring, polishing, and even milling. The PushCorp with their solutions and their force compliant tools gives the robot like a sense of touch and feel, and we'll explore more of those in detail. So to learn more about PushCorp, you can visit their website at www.pushcorp.com, and be sure to follow both PushCorp and Maximiliano Falcone on LinkedIn. So hey, good afternoon, Max. How are you
Hey
doing?
Joe, good morning, Marty.
Yeah, thanks for taking time out today to join us on the PSA BizTech Podcast. So where does life find you today?
So I am based out of Wixom, Michigan. So we actually share some space with another automation end of arm tool company called MagSwitch. So we have an office here in Wixom, just outside of Novi, Michigan. So we support all of sales and technical support out of this office here.
Now, you're not affiliated with MaxSwitch, are you?
We're not.
You're not.
We're just old friends, and work together. And we have we have a very symbiotic relationship in that they do a lot of ferrous metal material handling, and we do a lot of ferrous metal material processing. So we have a pretty good setup here where we share robots, we share some space, and obviously share some costs here because they're based out of Colorado, we're based out of Dallas, so it just works out really well.
Yeah, we've got one of our the Fanuc Robotics, our current account manager from Fanuc actually worked for MagSwitch for several years. I don't know. Do you know
Oh yeah,
Benjamin
oh yeah,
Walters?
Ben. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
Ben very well.
yeah. So we get support from him. He's a great fellow.
Great
So
dude.
okay, before we dive into this whole who PushCore is and all about that, tell us a little bit about yourself, Max. Like you've had a pretty stalwart career, going through, but let's like, how did you get into robotics and automation? Because we all have a story, right? Of like how you got
Yeah.
involved in the business, and it's always interesting because I know how I got involved in robotics and automation. Interested to know how you did because you spent career, somewhat how I transitioned through it as well. So go ahead and explain that to us if you could.
Yeah, so essentially, as you mentioned earlier, I went to the University of Detroit Mercy, and I ran the student race team, the mini SAE Mini Baja team there. And it's a little bit of a long story, but essentially, I got into this career through First Robotics without even being involved with First Robotics at the time. So I had an axle, so I had my chromoly shaft, and I had to turn an axle so I could get it to the spline shop. And I showed up to the machine shop to turn this axle, and there was two kids, probably seventh graders. No, they had been high school, so ninth, 10th graders in there trying to make some bushings on the lathe. And I had a night class to go to, and so finally I said, "Hey, can I help you out?" And I made these two bushings for them, and they ran off, and I showed them how to use the scale and the mic, and kind of go through all that with them, but with still keep in mind that I had to get this axle turned because I had to get to the spline shop. So then I'm turning my axle, getting everything set up and going, got my die chem on it, and making my marks and laying it out. And this gentleman walks up with the two bushings and says, "Did you make these?" And I was like, "Oh man, I'm in trouble." And and he's like, "I said, yeah, I'm sorry. I said, they were trying real hard, but I've got a timeline to keep here." And he's like, "No, these are great. This is awesome." So we talked a little bit, and he said thank you again, and went off. And so I finished my axle, did what I had to do, go to my night class, and then the next time I was in there making some parts for our control arms, he came back up and said, "Hey, I've been looking for you. I want to ask you, do you have a co-op set up yet?" And I said, "Actually, no, I don't." And he says, "Well, get me a resume. Here's my card." And so I got hired into my first co-op at that time it was Progressive Tool Pico,
Oh yeah, I know the guys.
Southfield, Michigan, and so they sponsored the robot team there, along with the university, and it was Team 247, the Bears out of Berkeley. So so I ended up working with the team and got a co-op at Pico, and then Kamal bought them shortly after, and I turned those two bushings essentially into a 10-year career at Kamal, and then what is now a 24-year career in automation. But it's kind of funny how those things go. They go full circle because now I'm mentoring my fifth grade daughter in robots. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But that's essentially how I got started. Just right place at the right time.
Right. And now was that pretty young in your career? You were still going to school. Like, how old were you at that time?
Yeah, I was probably 19, 20.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow. Hmm.
yeah,
That's pretty cool how that happens, right? And that
yeah,
sets you on a path. What a great career
yeah,
path, too.
yeah. So that first co-op was actually with the was on an assembly line that went to Chicago for Ford. So it was when they first was the assembly line for the Mercury Montego and the Ford 500. Um, so I spent half the summer here in Detroit building the assembly, helping build the assembly line, and then went to Chicago to receive it and part of the team that did the install there. So it was a amazing experience. I mean,
Yeah.
at that age and that point, it was awesome.
Right. Now, Marty, like what he's talking about are very large, like automotive lines, assembly lines, and that's pretty daunting, right? So being at that age, just kind of coming into that and getting yourself acclimated, involved in those large scale installations. Oh, wow. Talk about drinking from a garden hose at that age.
Yeah, no, it was awesome, and the guys, the team there is amazing at Kamau. I learned so much. Like, would have never learned all that stuff in the classroom.
Yeah, well, so like many of us, it prepares us for what we didn't know what was coming in life, right?
That's right.
We don't realize that's what's happening, but I'm making the assumption that all those experiences from being a young man as you grew um, helped you uh, get into and get a new career in a new company. Am I pretty accurate on that? That your past experiences prepared you for what you're doing now?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think you don't know what you don't know at that point. So and you find out really quick how the world works, and your mom and dad aren't there to help you. There's nobody. You grow up pretty quick in those environments, and like I said, being at that age, where you're working with trades, right? So there was millwrights, electricians, and most of these guys were the age of my dad. And
Sure.
you're trying to figure out where to go, how to do things, and be safe and not get hurt. And there's high lows and things flying around. So yeah, for sure, it was quite jumping into the deep end there. So
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Back to you, Joe.
that's great. So we talked a little bit about it during the intro of these patents. Is that something you can talk about? How you developed? Were you involved in the development of these patents?
yeah, so like I said, as you said in the intro, I got my master's degree in product development, and that's where a lot of my passion lays in solving problems and helping people. And that's one of the most exciting portions of what I do here at PushCorp is just the variety of different things that I get to work on. But so one of the patents is due to robotic guidance. So worked very closely with a company that is now a standalone company and even smaller world. They're on the other side of this wall here. This picture hanging on the wall is Recognition Robotics. So, so that company. So I originally started working with the founder of that company, and then Joe Sirik, who's the president of MagSwitch. He's on that patent as well. But essentially, we correlated a single 2D picture into how to calibrate it into a 3D reference frame for a robot. Is what that first patent has to do. And then the second patent has to do with weld damming. So essentially, when you've got a double bevel on a big thick plate and you want to weld at the end of that plate, the weld is like a lava flow that just rolls off the end of the plate. So there was two ways of doing that, either through like a copper end plate that you weld up into, or a lot of people are using ceramics. The ceramic is a one-time use, so it creates a lot of waste. So if you're ISO 14001 or anything like that, where your environmental safety policies, that's a lot of waste that's generated through those ceramic solutions. So my team and we came up with a way to use a very similar material that's already in the weld wire as an oxidizer as that weld dam, and how to affix it onto parts so that a robot could drop these weld dams off and terminate these ends, so you can automatically weld these big thick plates with the robot.
Oh, wow. So would that weld dam then become part of the weld mint? Be consumed?
No, and that's
Or is it
that's
just
what was used. That's what was unique to ours. So like with the copper ones, you can, if your weld is hot enough, you can get some copper coming back into the weld. Then you have to back gouge out and refill and fix. So with our product, because we weren't using anything different that was already in the wire, so essentially the oxidizer that's in the wires, very similar chemical makeup to what we were doing. It's just we worked with a company to figure out how to actually make it machinable so that we can machine a negative mold that went onto these parts. And then once it cooled down, it automatically separated. So we'd have to wait about 60 to 90 seconds, and it would separate and leave nothing there that wasn't there before.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, great. Man, that's pretty impressive, Marty, coming up with those technologies to advance manufacturing in those ways. That's pretty cool, because then, you go back to that vision solution that could be, very much useful for what you're doing today, in material removal, right? Where if you don't have a CAD model, or you want to kind of simplify some programming, potentially you use that reference, right? So now the reference point in which you can then use that trajectory for putting that media to the surface, correct?
Yeah, 100%. So if back in the day, we were calling it visual fixturing, is one of the things we were really working on. Just drop a part on the floor, find where it's at, and go to it and do the work that you need to do. Either pick it up and place it, or grind it, drill it, whatever you have to do. And we're looking at a lot of those. I think a lot of these things, in a lot of ways, we're way ahead of our time, right? But now you start looking at all these solutions that are coming out with low programming, no programming robot solutions, where they're scanning parts, creating 3D math models, and comparing it to the CAD and going and doing work. Like that. A lot of what we were doing back then is the precursor to what you're seeing today. That for us was like super high tech and whatever. Now you've got kids coming out of college being able to do these things. It's like it's amazing.
Yeah, you're a member of the ARM Institute's ecosystem, correct? A
Yeah, that's
PushCorp
right.
is a member of that, right? So they're doing some really interesting things there, right, on that higher level, like kind of stuff that you're talking about there, but also on the more simplistic side, through their Build Back Better program, and PushCorp has done a really nice job of helping them out navigate this the material removal aspect of what they're trying to do for the Build Back Better. Can you speak a little bit about that, like your involvement? Because I know you were there, you were just there. I was there at the
Yeah,
member meeting, and talk a little bit about that and the importance for PushCorp to be
yeah,
involved.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, actually, I was talking with the folks at ARM. I've made 7 trips to Pittsburgh this year already, for various different activities. So starting in January, we installed equipment in Mill 19. So that is now a de-risking facility that's set up to where companies that are working with ARM can come in and de-risk their applications there in the lab with the team. So there is a PushCorp compliance device and a spindle mounted on a Yoskawa robot there in the lab, fully set up and operational, 100% 100% same equipment that you would see out in production.
Right.
So, and then we did a material removal. We did a material removal workshop in February, I believe, which I believe you guys were at as well. And so that was to bring awareness and for the local area and part of that Build It Back Better program. As far as how do you automate a lot of these material removal applications? And there was a lot of case studies, a lot of success stories, a lot of different things shown. And just my plan for going into that was helping people understand what information do you need to gather, what questions you need to ask as you're visiting these customers, and or even if you're an end user, what information do you need to gather and have ready when you want to go out and solicit solutions from a system integrator or a solution provider, line builder, whatever your case may be. So I think out of those two things, like I said, I've been to Pittsburgh quite a bit this year, and it just keeps growing and growing, and it's amazing the reach that ARM has now, as far as not only in the Pennsylvania in the Pennsylvania landscape, but even further
Right.
out across the country, right? So they've got members all the way out to California and reaching out all over the place. So it's been great. It's been again another great synergistic relationship that we've been able to forge with ARM.
Yeah, I know we've got a lot out of that event when we're Brian and John from our Lawrence facility out there in Pittsburgh. They came out and they gleaned a lot of information from that event. So much that it kind of drove us down a path on a project that you're quite familiar with, which we executed. Um, using your equipment because they got very comfortable seeing how the simplistic, and I'm going to say simplistic, but
Yeah, yeah.
automation is never simple, but it certainly does make it a little more simple than some of the other ones, which we're going to get into. But yeah, that was a great, and to have that right in the Pittsburgh area to be able to go see that and gain some of that knowledge or confidence, of an application that can be done is critical. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, Max, now let's get into PushCorp, right? I mean, here we are, we're wanting to talk a little bit about yourself and your background, all that, but here, PushCorp, right? So, who is PushCorp and really, what do they really do?
So PushCorp, so we're the creators and manufacturers of the first active compliance device that was on the robot market. So we incorporated in 1993 in Dallas, Texas. So actually 31 years now that we've been um, supporting the industry. So throughout the 90s, we started with the active compliance device. We expanded to passive compliance device. We added servo spindles at the end of the 90s, belt sanders, finish stands, and then a bevy of other products to support robotic material finishing, right? So that's really what we do. We don't get into material handling. We don't get into welding. We don't get into all these things. So all what I'll call, to use a buzzword, right? Everybody talks about additive manufacturing. We're all about subtractive manufacturing, right? So we're removing gates, grinding, flashing, graining, stainless steel sinks, all kinds of different things. So, and then, as these trends start to happen, we added a weld shaver for removing large welds off of vessels, whether that vessel is a tank or like a storage tank or a boat. We can remove large welds. And then as trends start to happen, things change. In the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've had this small robot boom, right? Whether it's
Cobots.
the cobots or different things that have happened. So now we're starting to release a whole line of small tools for these things, where everything that we've had in the past has been very large, geared toward the large industrial robot market. Fortune 200 and better type companies. that you're working with. But now we're really focused on supporting the small to medium sized manufacturing landscape, right? They're hurting the most. They need automation the most. When you look at all this hiring crisis and the fact that a lot of these small manufacturers are now competing against fast food in the same price range, right, for what they're paying their employees. So we're really sensitive to that and working with partners like yourself, like the project you just mentioned. These small tools are really what we're focusing on right now, as well as very large tools. So now we're like working on 2 end caps of what we have, because the other bases, the foundries, they're trying to automate and get things going. And right now they're running huge AC motors, and how do you get those onto a robot and be effective and be able to run with these larger abrasives. So, but yeah, we're very proud to be a U.S. based manufacturer. Born and raised out of Dallas, Texas. Like I said, we have this office here in Michigan, and we were acquired in March by Walter Surface Technologies. So we're looking now at the synergies between that and how we're going to grow and keep supporting our customer base. We're super excited.
Yeah,
Well,
Max,
there's a lot. Oh, go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Marty. No, go ahead, Marty.
Max, I appreciate the attention to small, medium-sized businesses. I think you're right on target there. And for those who are listening, why don't we tell everybody your website, if we haven't already mentioned that, of how they can learn more about what you do.
Yeah, so PushCorp.com is the website. And then we also have a very active YouTube and LinkedIn account. So if you go to YouTube and search PushCorp, PushCorp, you'll find our YouTube channel. We have a lot of videos up there that show several different applications that come out of that small to medium space.
Excellent. Okay, Joe.
Yeah, that's great. No, I was just going to go back a little bit more on that synergy for that acquisition from Walter Abrasives. I mean, that's complete synergy, and I can understand how they would want that relationship, right? To
Yeah.
the media, right? And then you need to use something with that media, and why not, with automation your solution. So yeah, that's a great fit.
Yeah, it's
And
been
when
great.
did that happen?
In March of
March
this
of
year.
this year? Wow,
Yeah.
that's fresh. Okay, how's that kind of coming together? As far as the working with 2 companies coming together in that merger, pretty good.
It's been great. Really, they've given us some additional resources to add to the headcount, and having a team now that is just so entrenched in the abrasive world, right? So where that we've got application engineers that are available to us. It's been really good, but also they recognize that we have a lot of existing relationships with other folks who can be seen as their competitors, and they've allowed us to maintain those relationships and keep those relationships growing and healthy. And we're still collaborating with everybody that we were working on pre-merger. We're still holding all those same relationships, and all those collaborations are all still in place, and it's been great. It's been really good.
Good. You mentioned a little bit earlier that you first came out with a compliance tool, and then they were like either active or passive. Can
hmm
you just expand on that? Because our listeners may not know, like, what is active compliance and what's passive compliance, and when would you use one over the other?
Yeah, so passive, I always think of that as like it's an open loop solution, right? So you are controlling a valve to meter the amount of air going into the compliance device. For those that don't know what a compliance device is, and what I'm referring to is a robot doesn't know how hard it's pushing onto something, but also a robot, for most intensive purposes of the definition, is a fairly rigid device that's programmed to follow a path that you tell it to follow. What our compliance device is a device that has a moving carriage that's on a set of linear bearings, and that carriage can be manipulated to apply force in a single vector both directions, so it can both push and pull. So what we do is we mount tools out on the end of that carriage that then make contact with the surface to create a finish. So like I said, the passive compliance device is a open loop device where you're using an external valve to meter air to it. So not to get too nerdy, but like for the example of like our AFD 72, for every PSI of air that you put into it, you get 7/10 of a pound of force, right, at the carriage. So if you're trying to apply more force than what your payload weighs, you put air in the top cylinder and it pushes down. If you want to apply less force than what your payload weighs, you put air in the bottom cylinder and lift it up. Um, so, but then if you look at our active compliance device, that's got a series of tools internal to it and sensors that all work together in concert to do that manipulation automatically. So you just feed it 90 psi of air, and it's got an internal accelerometer that identifies orientation with gravity, and it automatically adjusts the air pressure in the device to keep the same amount of force on your part. So what we've seen through the data is obviously you're getting consistency, right, through that robot, but you're also programming a lot less points with the robot because that compliance device, as it moves, that robot can move in a straight line. And if your surface varies a little bit, the compliance device is going to handle that. So you don't have to program the robot, and the robot doesn't have to make all these moves. We can just move straight across, right? But typically what I tell people, if you're doing something flat or planar, active all day long, or a slight curvature is okay with passive. But if you're going to be doing something like, let's say you're buffing a beach ball, right, you're going to want active, right? Or, we're very heavy into what I'll call like metal enclosure, metal weldment finishing. So whether that is a safe, a casket, a semi-truck bumper, an off-road truck bumper, a casting, right? In any of those metal finishing, the active compliance allows you to rotate all the way around that part and get that finish that you need to get while emulating what a person's doing with their wrist and elbows and shoulders and biceps and triceps on a part with a hand grinder, right?
Right. Yeah, I was involved once in a project. You mentioned caskets. Oh my gosh, I'll never forget that. But yeah, we had to buff and polish caskets. Not we. I was just involved with the robot OEM,
Yeah.
but an integrator was trying to do that, and they were actually using something that's a little bit different. They were using through the arm force control. Where,
Yeah.
you're going through a serial measurement board. It's measuring the force that's being applied through all six axes of the robot. And when you got a curved surface, that was a challenge. Keeping that force, down relative to the surface, right? And
Yeah.
boy, could that integrator have used your solution?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
it turned out that it
not a
turned,
problem anymore.
probably turned out that they probably did end up using it at
Yeah,
some point. But yeah, but
yeah,
Yeah.
this is
So
funny.
Yeah, so with that through arm technology, you're using all 6 degrees of freedom of the robot through a strain gauge sensor to adjust ounces out at the TCP, right? So as you're moving along, this robot is manipulating its position to adjust that force. What you'll see is that our solution allows you to move much faster as far as a linear path for processing that part. Because the faster you move with one of those force sensing through arm force sensing units, if you're moving too fast, the point that you're adjusting for, you're already past. By the
Yeah,
time it does the calculation, adjusts, and comes back. Where ours, like I said, with our active compliance, it's closed loop out at the end of the tool. So as those things are happening, it's automatically adjusting as it goes.
yeah. So that was very interesting. I got to experience that firsthand for sure. So I guess I'd imagine you're getting ready soon to go to Florida, right? For FabTech? You got to be going to
Oh yeah,
FabTech, right?
yeah. Actually, October 15th to the 17th in Florida, Orlando. Um, I think this was technically supposed to be a Las Vegas year, but they moved the show to Orlando, which is exciting to get that market down there. It's the first time that I've been to Orlando for a trade show, so it'll be interesting. Obviously, I've been down there for the A3 forum a bunch, but an actual trade show, it's gonna be interesting. So Yeah, so we're expecting a big Latin American contingent down there. So we're bringing our sales engineer from Brazil who runs all of Latin America up. So, but yeah, we'll be there. We'll be there all week.
Yeah. What
Brilliant.
are you going to be demonstrating?
So we are actually unveiling two new products for the small robot market. So small, I guess I'll spill the beans, but small active compliance, and then we're also going to be showing our small servo spindle tool changer.
Ooh, interesting.
So and then also being unveiled at that show, or really launched at that show is we have a partnership with OTC, to where they've integrated the PushCorp into their robot controller, as a just like you would see like a welder, on the controller. They've got a PushCorp interface on their robot controller, so that'll be there as well in the OTC booth, and then we'll have equipment over in the Walter booth as well, showing a cobot finishing solution there as well.
And what's your booth number?
We are in W5021.
W5021. Okay. All right. We'll make sure you put that in the show notes. If we can get this out in time, we'll try to get that, so we can link that all up. So we'll try to
Oh,
push
that'd be
this
great. I
out.
appreciate
Yeah,
that.
yeah. That way we can get some publicity on for that. Um, yeah. So I think it's a good time, Marty. Why don't we think about wrapping up a little bit? And before we do that, Max, we always like to kind of end the show with a success story, right? And if you have one that's a glaring success story that you'd like to share with us, that you can share with us, please do. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, so obviously we've got the project that we're working on together. That's an incredibly exciting project. Unfortunately, I don't think we can talk about that one too much. But if I mentioned our YouTube channel earlier, so down in Dallas, we have 5 robots set up in Dallas ready to run customer projects. So we're essentially booked out 3 to 4 weeks usually in the lab with customers coming in with projects, and we have a pretty good success rate of converting those opportunities into turnkey projects. So one of them, if you go on our YouTube channel, you'll see a video of a fire extinguisher being polished. So that customer, the equipment that's been polishing these fire extinguishers was installed in the 60s. Um, the company that installed it, is still around and a great partner to us, but they weren't really interested in refurbing that machine for obvious reasons, right? So this customer worked with a local vendor, and they took our equipment and actually mounted it on a gantry. Didn't even go on a robot, just on a 2-axis gantry,
Really?
with a lathe, and they're polishing these fire extinguishers with one of our spindles mounted to a gantry. So like that's a huge one. I mean, you want to talk about, they did the automation, the installation pretty much themselves. They
Yeah.
pulled all the parts and pieces together, but it all started with a demonstration in our lab, right? And like I said, that's a great one. And then we've been doing a lot. We've been doing a lot in the, like I said, in the foundry world. So we've got a lot of really good, successful foundry success stories as far as degating, deflashing, doing those tough chores where it's a tough environment. It's hot depending on where you're at. I went to a foundry in Tennessee. It was 90 outside. It had been 110 inside.
All
These are
day.
tough environments. So
All
so
day.
those are great jobs for robots. And like I said, with a lot of the foundries, what I've found is that you take these people and that had a manual job, and now you give them a technical career path once you install that robot, because somebody still needs to maintain it, somebody still needs to program it, right? So that's a lot of opportunity for people looking to invest. And I always tell people, it's, everybody's concerned about getting a robot programmer. Now that everybody's got a computer in their pocket, I think programming a robot, is the least of your worries if you've got somebody that's excited and willing to learn.
Yeah, and there's so many technical schools right now, colleges, even tech schools like high school level now are getting into robotic programming as either a pathway for education towards a career. So more and more, it's going to be commonplace, really, to find those, and we're certainly
I
looking
agree.
forward to that time. But anyhow, okay, Max, I think that's it. Marty, are you all good? I mean, do we cover
I'm all
everything?
good except to remind them again of the website and YouTube. The website again is Max. Tell us.
www.pushcorp.com and YouTube is PushCorp.
Yeah,
All right.
you're somewhat excited about that YouTube channel,
I
so
am.
let's
I
push
am.
people to that YouTube channel. You
It's
know,
Yeah,
it's my
we
it's my number
excellent
one
job.
selling tool.
I feel like I got the start of an advanced degree here in all of this discussion. So phenomenal job and congratulations on all the great work you're doing.
yeah.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Had a great time.
Hey, yeah, and have a great time down in Orlando at FabTech. That's going to be great. And you're going to be in booth W5021. And
Correct.
yeah, I wish I was going down. We're not. We won't have representation down there, but I'm sure you'll have a great show, and I look forward to hearing more about that when you're all done. So again, thanks,
Excellent.
Max. I really
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Max. Appreciate it.
Joe Marty, thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity.